Jack, you're speaking on the 18th, are you? No.
It could be, or the 17th. I'm not quite sure. It's one of those. Yes.
Yeah, and you and Jackie and all of you are on the same day, one after each other. So that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that.
And Marie is speaking on another day. I'm going to just check it, and I've highlighted them. Very good. I definitely want to listen.
Great.
Bruce, yesterday, Bruce, I'm saying, sorry, because it says Bruce here. Pip, yesterday we presented at the ANNA conference with my students from this university.
Wonderful.
Yes. They were so excited.
Did the technology work well?
Oh, yes, it did. But one of the things is we just didn't have a PowerPoint. We just had them speaking. And anyways, it was 5 minutes. So if in 5 minutes you try to bring in slides and all, it's just too complicated. So they were so sharp. Jack, what is the first comment they said? Jack, sir, was so smart and clever. He was so sharp. He caught that thing about no question for an action research. I said, yeah, okay. They're just learning action research, so they're very particular about everything.
No, they were very good. It was a real delight to see them there. From Sardar Patel. It was a treat.
Yes, thank you. They're all studying with Mukshita, Radha, the other subjects, like all the social work subjects, they're working with, studying with them. Well, we just have about 4 minutes and then we can start.
Is it all right if I just test out this present now?
Of course, do it. Yeah, okay. Definitely.
Your entire screen. Let's have a look. So allow. Select window or screen. So hang on. Entire screen. Allow. So. Now, can I just see? Has that come up?
Yeah, it's come up perfect.
Oh, great. Okay, that's fine. Now let me see if I can. Yeah, I can stop sharing. Yeah. Okay. Good.
I think one of the things that happens in Google Meet is it covers the whole screen, right? And we can't see ourselves. Hi, Brian.
Hi, sure.
That's what happens, and then it's a bit scary.
Yeah. No,
in Zoom, you can see yourself and the screen, so it's a little better. Yeah.
So our knowledge partner, Mr. Subbu, is here. Welcome.
Oh, how nice. Subbu. Hi, Subbu. Yes, we are recording it, right, Shivani?
Hello.
Yes, we are recording it. Hi, Subbu. Subbu,
hello,
you have to meet Jack, Marie, Brian from EJOS.
Hello.
You met Shivani, right?
Yes.
Oh, we've not officially met, but we know each other.
Okay, yeah, great. And remember the paper I said that we wanted to try to get for this issue?
Yep.
Subbu's group called Learning Curve is trying to write a paper. So, after this, they're going to probably make some changes and then submit it.
Yes.
How are you, Shivani? Fine. Looking lovely. The registrar's name is Jyoti Tiwari, right?
Doctor.
Yeah. Dr. Jyoti Tiwari.
Yes.
Is the VC coming?
I don't think so because of time clash. We have a 2 webinar at the same time.
Oh, how sad. Okay.
So shall we start? Would you live it?
Just a minute left, right? Let's wait for that.
No, first we have to live for it.
Okay, fine.
From
You're the boss.
You're the boss. Another from SP University who had joined, please live on the Facebook.
Mark's here too. Hi, Mark. Shivani, it's all up to you. You do exactly as you have to.
No. That to Mukshita will work out. I'm just looking for that SP University. One participant in from SP University. I just want to let me call and just because let it be first live and then we can start.
Okay.
We are live, ma'am. On
Okay,
YouTube.
already live?
Yes, ma'am.
If they're live, then we should start. Where is Shivani, ma'am?
Let me check your FB too, then we can start. From SP University account.
Okay.
Yeah. Anamika, are we live on SP University?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We are live on SP University.
Yeah, Mukshita, will you please?
So, if you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours. On this note, a very warm greetings to the galaxy of intellectuals, invited guests, and the teaching fraternity and all the research scholars. It is a matter of unparalleled privilege and esteemed honor for me to be given this opportunity to anchor this webinar on the theme Living Educational Theory Research and the Teacher as a Professional, which is partnered by NEM Life Skills, eJolts, Educational Journal of Living Theories, Learning Curve, Life Skills Foundation, International Association of Social Work Educators, and Federation of Social Workers. I, Mukshita Rangadarya, Assistant Professor at the Department of Social Work, Sardar Patel University, welcome you all to this webinar. We are so pleased to share that more than 1100 registrations have been made for this webinar. This webinar constitutes the audience from across the globe. Also, out of 100%, 70% are academicians, 30% are practitioners from varied fields, and this is our audience for the today's webinar. So this webinar is also live on Facebook and YouTube channels. Now, I'm extremely honored to introduce our department and the Sardar Patel University in front of the distinguished gathering. The Sardar Patel University was established in the year 1955. The university has already completed 66 years of fruitful existence. Besides, the department have completed 23 years, and soon in this upcoming September, we are 24. So the Department of Social Work is engaged since 24 years continuously in striving to achieve the best for the students' overall development, and which also contributes to the societal development. Now, I am pleased to invite our beloved director, Dr. Shivani Mishra ma'am, to introduction of this webinar and formal welcome of the guests. Ma'am, please.
Okay, you need to unmute, Swaroop.
Shivani is speaking.
Ah, right, we can't hear Shivani.
Shivani?
Unmute.
Mukshita, I've got a message saying they cannot hear us properly.
The audience, ma'am?
Yes, YouTube live is not audible, ma'am. So in YouTube, we are not able to.
We can just put a note saying that if you're on YouTube, to get onto Facebook. Right? Yeah.
Shall I do that, ma'am? Yes.
Please
I
do
will.
that. Yes.
Yes.
Mukshita, can you connect with Shivani?
Computer is not working properly.
Okay. So,
Okay, you have to unmute.
Webinar. Am I
Hang on.
audible?
Yes.
So I hope I look good now. It's an honor to welcome you all. And all I can say that it's a great webinar because I thought of to have, we thought of to have such webinar since long, and somehow it really, I have no words to tell that, the living theory which is very close to my heart, it's going to be disseminated to several people, and it's a matter of privilege that more than 1,000 people already enrolled. It's a first attempt from our end to introduce everyone about the webinar, and this is going to be a success. About we have like 4 speakers today, and Dr. Whitehead Jack. I mean, I always said Professor Whitehead Jack. It's my privilege to introduce our today's keynote speaker, Professor Jack Whitehead. He's no, before introducing the format, let me introduce that I'm really fortunate that I met him. The reason why I'm saying so, because he's the one who has not only introduced me the living theory, but he make me a competent to practice the living theory. And his modesty remind me the one of the importance the word guru in our culture, and in one of our Western culture, where we say that whatever one obtained from guru cannot be obtained from elsewhere. With the grace of the Guru, one did gets everything. This reminds me the his humility towards my own professional enrichment. Am I audible?
Very bad.
Yes, ma'am.
Very bad. But
Okay, shall I
Mukshita, am I
begin?
audible?
yes, Shivani, you're not audible. Do you think we could take this later on, and Jack could start maybe?
Yeah, sure. Are you okay? Can you hear? Yeah, oh, that's good. Okay, well, it's a real pleasure to be here. And I just want to thank the staff at Sardar Patel University, and Shivani and Swaroop and others that have organized this and enabled me to actually talk with you about living educational theory research and, if you like, enhancing professionalism in teaching. Because this is something that has actually occupied me throughout all my professional life, which is how do we enhance professionalism in education? And the idea that I hope you will actually take and work on is that each one of us has got the capacity to actually explain our educational influences in our own learning and the learning of others, and also in the social formation influence what we do. Now, on my screen, I can see Mark Potts, I can see Marie Huxtable, I can see Pip Ferguson, I can see Swaroop, and it's fantastic because Brian is there, and I know that you've all actually gone into your own educational practice as professionals, and you've actually produced accounts and explanations which you have made public. Now, this is after actually doing, for example, doctorate. So it's not that the doctorate is the end of this kind of inquiry. In many ways, you only just begin when you've got your doctorate to inquire into your practice and actually start to research your questions of the kind, how do I improve what I'm doing? And you build explanations of your educational influence in your own learning. Now, that is what is different about living educational theory research, that it requires you to produce, generate, and share your explanation of your educational influence in your own learning and the learning of others. And these are values-based explanations. Each one of us that is present today have your own unique constellation of values that you use to make sense of the world we're in and that you're actually working on to improve your practice in education. And that's why living educational theories which is often put in lowercase because it means that you are actually generating your own explanation of your educational influence. This is really important because it differs from all other forms of traditional theory, where you generate from a theory an explanation for an individual. It's called a process of deduction. In living educational theory research, you generate your explanation of your educational influence from the ground of your practice, and also for living your own values as fully as possible. And this is why the idea of the visual data is so important, because I can talk, if you like, at you, say for 15 minutes, and I use words, and my words value words like justice, freedom, there's democracy, there's actual love, compassion. But those words can be defined in terms of other words. In living theory research, you've got to show your meanings that are embodied in your practice over time and interaction as you clarify your meanings through practice. And this is a really important point for a living educational theory research. Now, in professionalism, the idea of enhancing your professionalism, both Maria Huxtable and I have put forward various papers where we've said how important it is to recognize that professionalism really involves you generating your own contribution to professional knowledge. So it's not just a case of you demonstrating that you have actually mastered the theories of others in terms of your sense of professionalism. But what you've got to do in our understanding of enhancing professionalism is doing what I know Mark did, and Mark was a deputy head, and Mark has actually inquired into his own practice. He's made that public as his contribution to the educational knowledge base. Brian and I have done the same in a paper that is going to be produced over the next fortnight in the Educational Journal of Living Theories. Swaroop has already done that, and a number of people present today, for example, Shivani has actually presented at the American Education Research Association over a month ago, looking at her practice and making it public. And this is what we're meaning by enhancing professionalism in education. It's not only trying to improve your practice, it's actually generating those explanations of your educational influence and actually making those public so they're open for conversations, responses to help you to enhance your view of professionalism. Now, what I'm just going to do now is I'm just going to briefly see if I can then share my data archive. This is my lifetime's collection of papers, reflections, the things I'm in touch with, the presentations I've given. So that I'm going to show you just 3 sections that you can actually access, including a whole range of living theory doctorates that have actually been accredited at universities around the world. I'm going to show you how you can access the Educational Journal of Living Theories. Also, what are called living posters that I do encourage you all to produce and share as a way of getting us going. And Swaroop's poster will be there. You'll see the Indian group where they just recently put that up. And I'm trying to encourage you to actually see that you can actually join this global community of living theory researchers by sharing your own living posters. Now, what I'm going to do is actually just present now, and I hope I do this. Let's see if it comes entire screen. Okay, I want to allow screen, entire screen. Let's come. Okay, allow. Okay. Okay, now I think you can actually see the archive. This is my own personal data archive. It's called, you can access http, ://www, and it's actionresearch.net. Now, you can access a free copy of my book on living educational theory by clicking on here. We've just literally half an hour ago finished this one here in Croatia with a similar topic to ours, enhancing your professionalism through living educational theory research. You can access the paper there. You've got this one today where the paper can be accessed here. Yesterday, Swaroop presented, and also Marie about educational conversations. So all of these are available that we've been giving over the past 2 or 3 weeks. Now, I want to show you first the living theory posters. You can access these and see how to contribute by going into here about how to create and share your living poster. Here are all the details of what to do and how you can share them. If you go into, for example, the most recent one, the Indian research group, you've got here Shivani, you've got Swaroop, you've got Nima, you've got a group of you, and more of you can submit your living posters, and we can get our conversations going and being sustained from your own local contexts. And this is why Sardar Patel is so important, not just within India, but globally, because of the life skills education program that is being developed at Sardar Patel. And as Swaroop says, it is a decisive approach to break the cycle of poverty, abuse and oppression of the vulnerable and marginalized. It is a form of education which has the power to transform societies. Now, it's these kinds of values which I'm urging you to put into your own living posters, and also then go further than that and actually produce, if possible, your own masters and your own doctorates, which can look at your contribution to professionalism by professionally contributing your knowledge to the knowledge base. Now, I do hope you will access all of these. You can browse through them and you look at where people have come from. This was Middlesex in UK about research in America. University of Lancaster, the very first one at the University of Lancaster, My Living Theory of International Development. Liz Campbell, Nipissing University in Canada. And this one has got love and being loved into learning as an explanatory principle which is accepted for a doctorate. And many people need to see these because they don't believe that an individual can actually make a contribution to knowledge which can be awarded a doctorate. This one here from Utrecht in the Netherlands on cosmopolitanism. Here, Nelson Mandela University for understanding the work of the community volunteer. I don't want to go on with many of these, but this was a very exciting one about creating living educational theory, a journey towards transformative teacher education in Pakistan from the University of Kathmandu, Nepal. So I'm hoping that that is one of the sections that you will access, which is the living theory doctorates. And you've got here, and I'll just briefly just put this on the screen, because here you can get a whole series of papers that have been published in, for example, refereed journals. These are the latest about action research and living theory. This is a very exciting one in the Second International Handbook of Self-Study of Teaching and Teacher Education. This one in Educational Action Research, it only came out a fortnight ago, which is about a living theory approach to pedagogical action research in higher education. And you can access those freely to download from that website, actionresearch.net. Now, the last thing I just want to show you, if I can, let me just see if I can bring it up, which was the Educational Journal of Living Theories. So I'll just see if I can get into that. Here we go. Okay, so you go down there on the right-hand side, and you come into the current issue of eJOLTS. And this is perhaps one of the most important things to access, which is the archive here of the whole of the issues of the journal. And if you get into that, you can actually access all of the ones from 2008. I was just showing the ones, the very first issue, that if you want something which is very exciting, look at this. Pupils as Action Researchers, Improving Something Important in Our Lives. I was showing this half an hour ago to Croatian researchers by Branko and Markia, where the pupils, 9-year-old pupils, were being shown to be action researchers in their own right, that they could actually inquire into and reflect on their own learning and their own practice. And as pedagogues, that's a term we don't use much in the UK, but in Europe, it's quite common to think of yourself as a pedagogue, and both Branko and Markia examined and explained their educational influence in their own learning and the learning of others. So what I'll do now, because I'm going to come back now and I'm going to stop sharing. Excuse me. That what I'm just urging you all to do is to access those resources, but not with this sense of the sage on the stage. But I love that notion of the guide on the side, where you are going to be committed to sharing your explanations of your own practice from your ground of your educational practice with your question, how do I improve what I'm doing in my educational practice? Now, often we use action cycles, action research cycles to get us going, but in action research, there is no necessary condition to produce a validated explanation of your educational influence in learning. And that's why I tend to go from my action research, using the action research cycle, into sharing the living educational theories as explanations of our educational influence. Now, I hope that's, if you like, clear in what I'm urging you to do. In the Croatian seminar an hour ago, we had the chat facility working, and people were actually, after going into pairs, they put into the chat the values that they were willing to be accountable for living as fully as they can within their practice. And I know at Sardar Patel University on the life skills program that researchers are doing the same thing, that you're actually sharing your own inquiries. Now, I'll leave you just one thought. If you go into the What's New section of my website, you'll be able to go down to the presentations made at the American Educational Research Association about 3 weeks ago with the theme of educational responsibility. And you will see that Shivani's paper is in there as a contribution to a global network. So it's moved from Sardar Patel University, which I know has got a mission which focuses on the contribution in the Indian context. Whereas what Shivani was doing was taking the quality of the work, and Swaroop does this again. Swaroop was doing this yesterday with students from Swaroop Patel, and actually sharing the knowledge being generated by Sardar Patel staff and students and sharing it globally. And that's what I'm hoping, that you will all see yourselves as literally citizen scholars, global educators. Mark Potts is present, and Mark actually introduced the idea of living global citizenship. And he's created democracy cafes within a city within the UK. And again, the research is continuing into that practice. Swaroop has taken the ideas from Mark in Mark's doctorate and also what's happening in Salisbury. And I know Swaroop has actually developed some of those in Indian context from Sardar Patel University. Pip Bruce Ferguson is present. Pip has actually acted as an examiner, for example, for Ariane Brigani's living theory thesis, and that has been now legitimated, the first one at the University of Lancaster. So we're all playing our part in spreading the influence of living educational theory research in these global contexts, as well as actually continuing, like I've done with Brian Williamson, to focus on our individual practice. So Brian and myself have got a paper in the issue of eJolts that is coming out, which is actually looked at what is called meta-analysis. Now, I learned this from Brian. So I am still, 50 odd years into my research, learning new things, which I find very exciting, and bringing those into my own living educational theory. And I thank Brian for introducing me to that. And literally, Brian acted as my mentor in actually developing those ideas with me. So we've all got this opportunity now to live out our values more fully in our practice, but more than anything, it is sharing them and actually seeing that through our conversations, and Marie's paper yesterday was actually on, and also today on educational conversations, how to start these, and then sharing it on the new posters, and then going as far as you like, even up to a doctoral thesis, as you develop your ideas in your practice, especially in living your own values, which you believe are counting towards the flourishing of humanity. This is really crucial. So I'm hoping in this brief introduction that I excited you to go to that data archive. It's very difficult using these numbers to participate together, but we often have chat facilities that can be made public. You've got my email on the end of my webpage, and I know that we can actually sustain this conversation. And Swarup is doing this for years, also Shivani from Sardar Patel University. And I just want to thank once again this opportunity to introduce the ideas, and hopefully we can sustain the connections in these conversations and see what's happening as we all continue to improve our practice, enhance our professionalism, but in particular through living our values of humanity as fully as possible. Okay, now my time is up, so I'm going to actually stop there and say thank you very much to Swarup and Shivani and pass it back to them.
Mukshita?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Thank you so much, sir. Now, may I now again invite Dr. Shivani Mishra, ma'am, because of some technical glitch, she couldn't complete the things. So I just again request ma'am to please proceed with the things. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Mukshita. Sorry for the technical glitch. Somehow it's not working. Anyway, so now we have a session of panel members, and three panelists is going to speak on their own experience about the living education theory and how they have put it in the practice. So before going for a panel intro, before going for the panel discussions, let me share that why we thought of to go for a panel discussions and why we thought of to work on this living educationals webinar. The reason is simple, is that we all teachers, because by now we came to know that 70% of teachers have enrolled the webinar, and the 70% of the teachers they thought of to be part of our program. The reason is very simple, because we all are moving towards the quality of an education, whether it is a school educations or whether we are talking about the education at higher level. All are working towards that. So in my own experience, when I worked in the living theory, and with the opportunity given by Professor Jack, I had presented my paper at ALRA, and I came to know that we all are working on to achieve the sustainable developmental goals, and we all want the quality of an education. So this is what I believe, that when I put the living theory things in the practice, I understand my own values, I consciously applied my values, and then I thought of to put it in actions, and that put me in a competent. I think this is all the teachers are have to work upon. Then only we can thought of to work. And so I myself always says that it's for me, it's a funeral approach where I can understand what the things is all about and how can I work on the quality of an education. So our first panel member, Professor Jack Whitehead, is a former president of British Educational Research. I'm fortunate enough to meet him in the ERA and the BERA conference, and I came to know about this theory. And he's a visiting professor and university in China and the University of Cambodia. And this is what he already shared about his action research. And this is, for me, is also a source of information to have a more understanding of living theory as well as the action research. Our second panel member, Dr. Swarup Raval. We all know her. She is awarded degree from the University of Worcester, both DLIT too. And passions were already covered by Professor Jack also, passions toward life skill educations, and work at, I always say that she has worked at the Pan India, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Rajasthan, whatnot. And at presently, she, last 3 years, she associated with our department. And I think the fourth batch this time we are going to run on the life skill educations. And the outcome, if someone will ask me what the outcome of this life skill education is, very simple. All our students are employable in their own professions. Not only that, one or two students have work on their startups. So that shows the positive outcome of the course that we thought of to work on, as well as the living theory. We all know that she is listed in top teachers for the global prize. Dr. Pippi Ferguson, it's a first meeting with me or her. With me, New Zealander, has worked in the education, most of her working in the primary schools, and she worked on the staff developmental rules. Various tertiary institutions she has worked on, New Zealand, England, Ireland, and glad to know that she is also a mentors and the researchers, and she's also the person who has constantly worked on the LET. Several challenges that she has worked upon. Just 2 weeks back, I came to know that she has also worked with our social work students. So, of course, how to articulate the values, how to put it in the practice, they are more available. So I'm fortunate enough and welcome all the panel members to share their thoughts with us, and again, enrich us for their professional competence and enhance our own well-being. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, I am extremely pleased to invite today's panelists to this webinar. That is Dr. Swaroop Rawal ma'am and Dr. Pip Ferguson ma'am, to lead the discussion on the theme which is in the nucleus of our today's webinar. Please, ma'am.
Yes, of course. And Dr. Jack Whitehead will be speaking too. But
Yes.
I'm going to begin. And thank you very much, Shivani and Sardar Patel and all the faculty members. Especially thanks for, having this. Well, I'm not going to get into all that right now. I'm just going to get to my talk. And I'm going to try to explain how values can continue to energize my lifelong learning and influence how they help me influence my education, the education of others, and in the social formation. What are the values I embody in my practice and my living? My alliance is to educational creativity, originality, democracy, service, love, empathy, competence, a sense of hope and continuous learning. Of course, all of us, as everybody knows, we have a long list of values. Jack says constellation of values, and they move up and down in the constellation. But I particularly named these because last year sometime I got up in the morning and I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? The new normal has set in. Physical distancing, masks, online learning, lecture format, because that's what I thought online learning was. And this is everything I positively was critical about all my life. I have invested hours and hours and hours of my life and my educational values in trying to create experiential learning curriculums, trying to get teachers to understand verbalization is not good, banking education is hopeless, that's not how we teach. And I get up in the morning, suddenly I realize that that's all I'm going to be able to do now. Believe me, for the first time in my life, I didn't want to get out of bed. And that's one of the sure signs of a beginning of a depression. It's terrible. You saw the world crumbling around you in the pandemic. You saw children's education being neglected. And I had written a line in my PhD which said that I'm going to try to enhance the learning of every child, every student in my country. I'm not going to give up at this age. I can't give up. But I could not get out of bed either because it was such a sad scenario. If if my aim as an educator is to work towards a good social order, if I was to strive for human betterment, I needed to ask myself some questions. And I asked myself, do I accept and am I living out my values fully as I can? Am I assisting in the creation of knowledge excellence in my practice while I'm working for the good of the community? No, I wasn't. I was giving up so easily. I was just giving up. I had no hope. But that's not what my living educational theory supported. I had to negate the contradictions I was experiencing. I had to stop. I had to get up. And I had to think about what I would do. For me, community means firstly my educational community. And I am so blessed that my educational community is working towards the larger community too, because my students are social work students. So I was like, what am I going to be doing? I cannot sit here saying I cannot enhance my learning and the learning of others. I cannot say that I will not improve. I will not say I cannot innovate. I cannot say I will not be creative. I cannot say I give up hope, because these were my values. I had to do something about it. Of course, at this point, I would say I was really lucky when I had a dear friend, a critical friend, who's Shivani Mishra. And she said, no, Swaroop ma'am, I'm not letting you give up. You have to come online. So I said, if I give up, I'm going to be an absconder. I have made a commitment towards education. And my values are very strongly committed towards that. So I said, get up and start moving. And that's what I did. I started thinking about everything that's wrong in online learning. I realized that online learning had become, it's the same as what it was in the classroom. Can you believe it? I had a parent who told me that her son has not seen his 8th standard teacher since 3 months because all she does is share the book. That's shameful. So I decided to cut down what is called the transactional distance and change my pedagogy. I changed the whole psychology besides it. And this is not about the physical distance between the students. It's that communication gap. It's the gap when you can't reach out to your students. That needs to be cut down. And I cut that down by having a dialogue with my students. I cut that down by changing the whole structure of my program. I changed from drama and education, which I've been doing all my life, and I brought in cinema and education. I brought in the radio. I brought in online games. Believe me, it was hard work, but it's my values and my commitment towards continuous learning, towards competence, towards the students of my country. And I said, I just have to get up and do that. And I did it. I have a few things to share with you. One of my students, she said she never thought of anything without, she did not think about values. She did not know what values were. She did not know where to look for her strength. And now every single decision she takes, she thinks about her values, where she's contradicting them in her practice. And now she thinks of how she would negate that contradiction. This wonderful girl would be writing reflections every day in the classroom. And I asked her one day, why are you writing it? She says, a lot of people have reflections which I don't know. And now she tries to answer the question about how am I unique? How am I different? Because she thinks There is something special for her there out in the world. One of my faculty, she was so wanting to do this program, but she thought it was just a hyped up program. And then she had a notion that it was chaotic because we were talking all the time and having a great time. Halfway through, she realized that, wow, it's really worth it. I'm learning a lot, but it's not probably contributing to the students' learning. But after reading their reflective diaries, she's realized that this program has transformed them and it has far-reaching consequences because of its specialness. One of my other students from social work HR who said that life skill is a total package and it's something that we really need for all of us. So I asked myself, and I answered this question, how can I contribute towards enhancing human flourishing in my organization and the community with the help of my living educational theory? So this is what it's all about. It's about your values. It's about getting up and doing it. It's about asking yourself, how can I improve my practice? I have something to share, but I think I've closed all the windows and I've lost it. So I'm going to not share it right now. It was a link which had my email ID and all the published works and books of my work. But as I speak, I will share it with you. You can find me on Twitter at YoSwaroop. You can find me on Koo again at @YoSwaroop. And if you want to write to me, you can write to me at nemlifeskills@gmail.com. nemlifeskills@gmail.com. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mokshita.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. I now invite Dr. Pete Ferguson, ma'am, to share her views.
Thank you, Mokshita. Could you put up the first slide, please?
Yes, ma'am. I'll just be doing.
Well, Mokshita is doing that. I wanted to talk about professionalism in teaching. The line that I'm teacher that will do, that's saying you're going to hear me say, we do the best we know how, and when we know better, we do better. It's something I regularly say to my new teachers because they beat themselves up for not doing the best job they can. And yet we're on a growth journey together. So my question to you, you teachers out there, is what will it take? What stimulus or lever or sometimes earthquake will it take for you to change your practice, to become a better teacher? For me, the most effective way has been living educational theory. But I'm going to take you on a quick journey through how I got to that point. As Shivani said in the introduction, I trained as a primary school teacher in New Zealand. In primary school teaching, they have a very good emphasis on pedagogy and the curriculum and how to deliver the curriculum, but there's very little emphasis on reflection. I never had a critical friend, and I very rarely ever got observed when I was teaching. So as far as I was concerned, I was doing a good job. I left primary school teaching to have my family, and when I went back into education, apart from the education that goes on when you're bringing up children, I got into adult education and I became a staff developer in a polytechnic. And I have done staff development work in polytechnics and universities and research leading in a Māori university. In the polytechnic sector, even if you are teacher trained as I was, you're required to do what they call tutor training, 12 weeks of it, in 2-week blocks. One of those blocks involved studying what it takes to be a reflective practitioner. And it makes you look at how your own practice is developing. It gives you tools for reflection. When I was teaching that course myself subsequently, one of my midwifery students wrote, and I thought it was a really good expression, I've never forgotten it. It is reflection that is able to turn experience into informed and committed action. That was a Pacific Island midwifery person called Moana Shortland. Her words stuck in my mind because it was such a good thing. It is reflection that is able to turn experience into informed and committed action. So I was learning some tools. I went on and did master's study. And in my master's, I based my exploration of who was disadvantaged in the New Zealand educational system on the pedagogy of Paulo Freire. Swaroop has already referred to banking education, and a little later in my talk, I'm going to be talking about papers which are on e-jolts by 3 Indian lecturers, educators, Nima Parikh, Rashita Yukani, and Swaroop herself. Rashita and Swaroop wrote the paper together. And the Freirean expression of banking education comes up in some of their work too. It gave me some further tools for developing critical awareness. And as a result of that, I decided to go on and do a doctoral study alongside my practice as a staff developer. Part of my teacher training in the polytech sector, because I was already trained as a teacher, I was able to opt to do something that wasn't usually offered, and it was course in action research. That to me was an eye-opener, particularly when you got into the kind of critical action research that Kemmis and McTaggart recommended. That moved me from looking outwards at teacher practice to looking at the wider systemic influences that we can investigate and explore. In 1994, I won a British Council Fellowship and went to the UK, which is where I met Jean and McNiff and Jack Whitehead, both of whose writings I had come across as action researchers. Jack's book, The Growth of Educational Knowledge, really woke me up to what you can do to investigate and address injustices in your own practice. And his further work after that in developing living educational theory gave me for the first time the concept of using a mirror, not just tools to look at practice out there, but the mirror that gets you to look at your own practice and whether and how you might be complicit in denying your values in your practice. The idea of being a living educational contradiction I found absolutely fascinating, because it made me think for the first time, in what ways is my practice, perhaps, despite my best intentions, not working well for those that I'm teaching and working with? I subsequently wrote a paper with my husband, who's lurking in the background over there and was also in the Polytechnic at the time, called Can the Goldfish See the Water? And it was an exploration of how, despite our good intentions, aspects of our practice were not working well for cohorts of students. In Bruce's case, it was Indian and Chinese students whose realities he did not understand when they were trying to cope with adjusting to the way we do education in New Zealand. In my case, it was my practice as a research manager in the Māori University in helping them to enter and negotiate a research assessment exercise and not recognizing how that form of judgment from a largely Western perspective didn't work well for Māori. So I accredit living educational theory with giving me that desire to actually investigate my own practice and to see whether I was doing what I thought I was doing. In the papers by Nima Parikh and the one that Rashita and Swaroop did, they address the realities of the Indian educational system and how aspects of that might cause them to practice differently from the way they would prefer based on their own values, but finding themselves in a system that subverts or works against those values. And I think that is very important work for us all to do, because we're all caught in a web of ways of operating that are traditional and often reinforced by dominant groups, but they don't necessarily work well for other groups. Nima's paper particularly almost mirrors, she wrote the paper in 2018, I think, it almost mirrors a paper that I wrote, which you'll see, you'll be able to access from the links at the end and the slide at the end, where I was looking at the influence of action research and living educational theory on my development as a researcher, as an educator. Swaroop and Rashita talk about how Rashita was dragged into teaching because of family needs and moving from being a very reluctant teacher to learning how to love her kids and gaining self-confidence through the work she was doing with Swaroop in the living... Sorry, Swaroop, I've lost the plot there for a minute. Life skills through drama. Yep, kia ora. So for you, what is going to motivate you to want to be a more professional educator? Is it just focusing on the curriculum? That won't get you far. You have to do that to teach effectively. But what is actually going to transform your practice and help you to see what impact you're having on your students? I think if you look at living educational theory and the wide range of resources that Jack has put up in his slides, and the amazing examples of practice that you will see in eJolts, you will find ways of doing it. One of my social work educators that I worked with when I was in the polytech sector found herself caught in a bind between having values of wanting to do the best by her students, but finding herself in a professional environment where she was forced to quieten down what she was saying so that she didn't upset apple carts. And it's that kind of tension that we find ourselves in as teachers, that living educational theory can help us to investigate and give us tools to work towards. So, Mukshita, if you wouldn't mind sharing the last slide, from which people will be able to pick up those links. I understand these slides will be available.
Yes, ma'am. I'll be doing.
And finally, remember, we do the best we know how. And when we know better, we do better. And if you log into Living Educational Theory, you will find a very effective way of doing better. Thank you very much to Sadhu Patel University for facilitating this, and thank you all for listening.
Yes, ma'am.
We're waiting for her slide, Mukshita.
Yes, ma'am. I'm doing that. Now my slide would be visible.
Thank you, Mukshita. As long as people have got access to that, that's all I'm worried about. But do look at the work by the Indian teachers because it is quite exemplary.
So thank you so much, ma'am. May I now please request Dr. Jack Whitehead, sir, to share his views.
Yes, thank you again. Yeah, I've really enjoyed both with Swaroop and with Pip. There are qualities that they are both living and have sustained over many years in terms of passion for education. And I just want to highlight something which I think you will all appreciate. And it comes out of something when I was in my 20s, I actually focused on, and one was called Ontological Despair, which is where Swaroop is saying about not wanting to get up in the morning, that you've very little purpose. Now, I was helped by the work of Eric Fromm, and he said, if you can face the truth without panic, you will realize there is no purpose to life other than the one you give to your own life through your own loving relationships and productive work. Now, I just want to emphasize that we've each got that capacity to make the kind of decision which is actually flowing with a life-affirming energy. You know, we can all feel ontological despair, but we can also get up in the morning with an energy and feeling that what we're doing in education is really worthwhile, and we can share our practice with others with the values which are hopeful and optimistic about the future of humanity. So that's one thing there from Swaroop I do think we could all benefit from. And you might think this is a bit of a red herring, but I worked with a female professor at Bath University called Judy Marshall. She then went to Lancaster University. Judy was always encouraging me not to omit gender issues from my research. Now, actually, I want to just stress that a little bit in terms of the quality of relationships that you can establish in terms of your inquiries in living theory research. This is not to deny that the men can't actually have these relationships at all, but it's just saying, look, I do think Judy was right, that to emphasize the quality of relationships often have a gendered bias. And the women, it feels to me, have got a quality of nurturing, of awareness, of sensitivity to the emotion of others. I know men can have this as well, but it's just that that seems very important. And when Pip actually talks about reflection and how that reflection can help you then to motivate you from the experience that you're having, again, to improve your practice, I think it's grounded in that kind of hopeful and loving energy. It's life-affirming. And what I think you'll find, if you look at your pictures, just the pictures on the websites that you put up on this, that's quite a lot of you. You will see you are full of smiling and energy. The ones that you choose to share with people have got that energy within them. And that is important, not to deny the importance of those qualities, which often come out in conversation and dialogue. So that is what I just want to really affirm what Swaroop has been saying there about the importance of that decision of yours to actually get up with hope and actually feel that you've got an energy which is actually productive and worthwhile. And then with Pip, that sense of the real critical importance of reflection. And I'd also see about the notion of the difference between reflection and being reflexive, where being reflexive, you become aware of the values which are actually informing your practice and your knowledge. And the last point I'll make is how important what Pip mentioned, and this was in the early 80s, when I was working with the ideas from Wilf Carr and Stephen Kemmis about becoming critical, knowing through action research. That what they did, which really inspired me, was go to the work of a critical social theorist called Jürgen Habermas. And what that work did was actually highlight the importance of what Pip was saying about the Indian researchers being aware of the constraints within the society which sometimes are disempowering. And it's coming to understand the nature of those social influences which can inform your inquiry. And you can bring those into the generation of your own living educational theory. And that's why I like Mark Potter's work so much about embracing the idea of being a living global citizen. You know, that this idea that we're not just educators, we're not just parents, or what, we're actually citizens within our society, and also global citizens, which Sardo Patel University, through the Life Skill program and what they're doing, are exemplifying in terms of the webinar now that you've organized, which is actually having this kind of global influence with 1,000 people plus that actually registered. So this is really important, I think, that we learn how to continue to develop these inquiries, but in particular with these values that Swaroop has been expressing as she's been talking, but that crucial decision that Swaroop took, and I know Pip has, in terms of that, you know, it's understanding the world. This is what comes out of Michael Polanyi's personal knowledge. Understand the world from your point of view as a person claiming originality and exercising judgment responsibly with universal intent. So this is the ground of personal knowledge, but it's also connected socially to what it is we're all trying to do with living our values of human flourishing as fully as we can. Is that okay? I'll just pause there. Okay.
Super, thanks a lot, Jack, because it takes me straight to the first question that's asked to you. Okay. And it's from Nalini. And I would really like to tell everybody we've got wonderful participants and listeners from all over the world. We've got people from New Zealand, Mongolia, all over India. We've got people from South Africa, England, Croatia, Italy. So here's Nalini. Dear Nalini, how are you? She asks you, Jack, what are your thoughts on flourishing of all entities, human and non-human, in sustainability of our planet?
Yeah, it's a really crucial question because of a particular movement, a movement of knowledge which is known as Post-Humanism. Now, actually, it sounds strange because I don't want to lose the sense of humanism. But post-humanism doesn't lose the values of humanity. It stresses that we should not just be human-centered. So when I talk about that energy, that sense of a life-affirming energy, it is cosmological. It's pre-human and post-human. It carries that energy for living. Now, that then takes us into this notion of sustainability, because we can't survive as a human race if we ignore the climate that we're actually destroying. That we cannot go on. You look at what's going on in the world, in Yemen, the violence, the killings, the warfare. We've got to do something about these, which takes us out of what this guy Maxwell, who's just published a book on what he calls wisdom inquiry. He doesn't deny what he calls knowledge inquiry. You know, we all contributed to knowledge inquiry, but he actually says we've got to concentrate on what he calls wisdom inquiry, which is what we're doing in education, which is actually live values of human flourishing as fully as possible. But it's carried by an energy which is cosmological, which is life-affirming, and actually brings in exactly what you're focusing on with your question, which is we've got to actually take care of the planet, which actually is non-human in many of its aspects, but without taking care of that, we as a species, as a human species, won't survive. Okay.
Thank you very much, Jack. Jack, one more for you, but I'm sure Pip can even help us with it. And first you, how did you get this idea of the living educational theory?
It was in the early 1970s, and I'd been teaching for 5 years as a science teacher, and I'd also studied 4 years part-time at the London Institute in terms of an academic diploma in philosophy and psychology and a master's in psychology. And what my philosophy professors told me was that educational theory was made up of philosophy, psychology, sociology, and history of education. And what I discovered as I was teaching, that not one of those theories, either individually or together, could produce a valid explanation of my educational influence in my own learning and the learning of my pupils. And so what I then did was say, look, my vocation is changing. I had a delight in being a science teacher. But in 1972, because of that knowledge that our very educational theory in our profession was mistaken, I actually went to the University of Bath, where I stayed all my working professional life, to see if I could actually generate a form of educational theory that could actually explain an individual's educational influence in their own learning and the learning of others. You draw on the disciplines of education, you draw insights from them, but you reject the discipline's approach to educational theory, which said that this theory, if you like, can explain the individual's educational influence. Okay?
Thank you. Pip, would you like to answer this question? It has to do with our living educational theory. it is very difficult to be honest with the self. How does one do that?
I think it's extremely difficult to be honest with the self. Reflecting on my own practice, I think our capacity for self-delusion is huge. And one of the ways that I have been helped to address that has been through submitting papers to eJolts, which are available for critical review. And the eJolts panel allocate 2 or 3, I think it's 3 now, Marie,
reviewers, yes.
In both the eJolts papers that I've put at the end of my slide, both of them refer to the influence of those reviewers in helping me to recognize where I have made insufficiently clear how I am demonstrating my values in my practice. And so it's that sense, the action research sense of having a critical friend. I have always used that since I discovered action research to discuss the out there issues that I was investigating. But living educational theory work encourages me, as I said before, to hold that mirror up to my own face. And even looking at my own face, I don't see all the warts and the blemishes. But the friends who are reviewing those papers will help you to see that work. I also should have mentioned while I was talking, another writer whose work has probably been very seminal to my development, the American writer Parker J. Palmer, who wrote an amazing book called The Courage to Teach. And again, as with living educational theory authors, he's searingly self-critical about his own practice and how he denies his values in his practice, and how we can teach from a heart of love, I think is the way he puts it.
Wow, that's such a super answer. Thank you very much. And there's one which is, I know, right for me because it's about life skills. The question is, how in this present pandemic situation can a teacher develop creativeness and life skills among students for the better of society? Yes, it's very difficult, but I know that I've actually managed to do it online. You need to just go into all the theories and make some great activities, attention-grabbing activities for the students. For example, when I started teaching listening skills to my students, I created a whole volume of songs which were only instrumental. Sorry, the instrumental version of all songs. And in the first, as soon as I started the class, the first thing I would challenge my students to guess the song. So I would play 6, 7 numbers which were just instrumental. And then they had to guess the song. And then I would do a fastest finger first and say, next time, which is the musician or the singer you want to listen to. And then, in the chat, I would get something and then I would work on it. The other thing is that I started, because I could not use drama in education, I used cinema in education. And I made clips from popular films to demonstrate the learning. And I think I have managed really well because my students have done some awesome work and they've gone ahead and done their research in it. My students have gone and taught 8th standard and 9th standard students, and they've done it online. So I think that they really grasped that type of learning. Jack and all of them saw a presentation by them just yesterday at the Action Research Network of America, the conference. And it's tough, but I think if you want to do it, you can find a way. There's a lot of resources on the internet. And like I told you, write to me. Again, my email ID is nemlifeskills@gmail.com. Write to me, I will help you. So I think we're running sadly towards the end of the webinar. It's so nice to be sitting with friends and talking. But before the formal thank you, I would like to say thank you. I would like to thank the Vice Chancellor, Dr. Shirish Kulkarni of Sardar Patel, he is so encouraging. somehow I never feel that I'm talking to a vice chancellor. I always feel as I'm talking to somebody like maybe an elder brother who's giving me advice and kind of encouraging me to do lots for my students. I'd like to thank the registrar, Dr. Jyoti Tiwari, for her support. Jack, of course, who I call my guru. I've learned so much from you, Jack. I don't know how I would have survived without you. And Pip, my dear, dear friend on the editorial board with me. And you've taught me so many things. So I really thank you for taking off so much time to join us for this webinar. But there's one other person I would like to thank very much. Somebody I met recently, just 3-4 years back. She came to my office to meet me from a city called Vallabh and she said, I have read a paper of yours in your journal, educational journal, and I would like you to come to my university to teach. Thank you, Shivani, Dr. Shivani Mishra. She has been an awesome friend and a critical friend and a peer and a colleague who supported any idea. And, people who know me know that I have crazy ideas sometimes. And she supported every crazy idea because she said, I just want my students to learn. So I want to thank you, Shivani, very much for what you have done. And this webinar actually is because one day I was talking to Shivani and I said, I want people to understand the living educational theory in India. Like I taught you and I taught the students at the Sardar Patel University. I want other people to learn the educational living theory. And so she comes up to me and she says, ma'am, let's do a webinar. So this webinar is because she's in a very indirect way fulfilling my wish. Thank you very much, Shivani, for everything you do for me. Mukshita, over to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. May I now please invite Shivani ma'am to share a few words.
So thank you so much, all the panel members. Today, actually 4 knowledge partners we have, but 2 have joined with us from the EJOLS and 1 from Learning Come. So if they want to say something, we have another 1 minute to go.
So should we ask Subbu first and then Murray?
Yeah, please.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Swaroop. Thank you, Dr. Mishra, for letting us be part of this. It's been a new area for us, I think, and this is so interesting. I think deeply rooted in reflection, deeply rooted in insights, in your own practice, in your own values, and based on some of the work we do, I think things like living theory has tremendous application to sort of enhance our own work as an organization. So absolutely delighted to be here, honored to meet such great people today, and I would love to sort of engage in some of those conversations and perhaps even write a paper myself.
I'm waiting for that.
So I should give it a shot. So wonderful! Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Subbu. Thank you very much. Marie, would you like to say something?
Sorry, that rather took me by surprise.
Yeah, sorry. That's Shivani.
My head is so buzzing with what you've all been saying and how it actually connects and makes me want to really now get on with taking forward living educational theory research, understanding the practice of it and what the difference that can make. And what Pip was saying and Jack has been saying, I really hope that people here will go into EJOLTS and have a look and see whether they want to start actually formulating their paper, because actually in the formulation of that paper and then submitting it, it might actually do what it is that Pip really, I've got your quote, Pip, that was a fantastic quote. I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better. And in developing a living educational theory research paper, then I learn to do better. And in the course of that, I do better. And as Pip was saying, the open review process part of it is where people are actually engaged in those really difficult, critical responses that they work with creatively, so that we can have a confidence that we are not deluding ourselves. And for very good reason. I want to delude myself as much as anybody else, and we'll try and really resist anybody who says, "Oh, actually, Marie, you're not quite doing that." But the way that happens in the open review process, I think, would be very helpful to each person as they're working on their paper. And in the process of it, they are actually making that knowledge globally available. And I think that's really important, because it's about the flourishing of humanity, not just humanity surviving, but the flourishing of our humanity, on how as a species we flourish and take into account what other people are working on globally and our planet as well. So I do hope that you'll go onto EJOLTS.net and look at the submission criteria with the paper. And as you begin to work on that, and with your colleagues and what Swaroop and students and everybody are actually doing, so you've got lots of people to work with, and in that journey too, you're actually bringing into being the very form of flourishing of humanity that we're wanting to see exist and happening. So I do hope you will go on to there and think about actually working on a paper.
Thank you, Marie. And Marie, would you like to announce that our next edition is going to be out in June?
Oh, yes.
And everybody should read it.
So, you lucky people, you've got you're the first people to get this forewarning that there's a special June issue. And I don't want to say too much more, because I think you will go in and actually find a surprise. And I don't want to spoil the surprise of what you find there, because it's actually a special issue. It's created a special issue. So that will definitely be published by the end of June. And we're working really hard to get it published before that. So keep checking, going on to ejolts.net, keep checking, and before the end of June, you will find, and I will leave you to actually see what will surprise, delight you, and hopefully inspire you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marie. Yes, just for everybody to know, Sardar Patel, Department of Sardar Patel, Shivani Mishra, Swaroop Raval, Jack Whitehead, Marie, and Ejols are all on Twitter. So you can definitely catch us there. Shivani, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, let me share take me only 1 second to go for, before I hand over to Mukshita. I was gifted by Swaroop ma'am the book of Jack Whitehead, The Living Theory as a Way of Life. And when I have to do a field work with the preschool children, then, that time I came to know that I never, consciously put my values in an actions. And this is how, after living theory, one the value which I always aspire to, and when I was studying during 97 in my social work program, I always said my teachers that, let our voice in our curriculum, So then nothing has happened, because that's a traditional way of teaching. But through this theory, I came to know that, and I developed the value of self-directed learning. And then this is how you had seen that so many students, several students, faculty members, 3 faculty members over earlier 3 faculty members, they have started their own way of teaching in the class, right? And if they encourage, if they motivated, if they inspire, definitely student will be. So this is how this is the reason, I always said that living theory is very close to my heart, and that helps me to understand my own values, and I motivate others to put their values in an action. This is my second phase of understanding the living theory. Right now I'm looking for my third phase of living theory, is of disseminate the people allow have a more academic engagement, so that in India, under the mentorship of Professor Jack and Swarup ma'am, we can definitely involve more people on it. And if you came to know that so many people from the science background, and we have a top D schools, that of IIM, IIT, the participants are also from there. So living theory is not for, we never divide living theory in science and social science. Living theory is of a human being, and if you want to flourish a human being, and if you want to work on the well-being, I think you are on the right track and the right place to work on. Over to you, Mushita. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. At this point of time, it is not exaggerating to mention one more quote, which I found it very relevant to this ending actually. At times, our own light goes out and it is again rekindled by a spark from another person, and that we all have received today. So, with this note, we at the Department of Social Work are extremely grateful to Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Professor Shirish Kulkarni sir, Registrar Dr. Jyoti Tiwari ma'am, for helping us to organize this webinar. Also, we extend our gratitude to today's keynote speaker, Dr. Jack Whitehead sir, for his keynote address. Also to the panelists, Dr. Swarup Raval ma'am and Dr. Pip Ferguson ma'am, for their valuable insights on the theme which was in the nucleus of this webinar. We are extremely thankful to all our knowledge partners that are Name Life Skills, EJOLTS, Educational Journal of Living Theories, Learning Curve Life Skill Foundation, International Association of Social Work Educators, and Federation of Social Workers for extending their cooperation and support to this webinar. Also, we are extremely grateful to the wonderful audience, those who are listening to us through YouTube and Facebook, for their cooperation and support. And we apologize for the technical glitch that we faced in the initiation. So we sincerely apologize for that. And with this, we hope to meet you all somewhere in life, in future, in person too. Thank you all once again. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.